Amber had drifted away yet again. Her aunt had whacked her out of her daydreaming down into a place she didn't like to be. Amber started to space out more and more as she became entrenched in the spiritual community. The options it provided made this small-minded church seem rudimentary. She had much rather explore large esoteric beliefs and take part in practices like astral projection, chakra balancing, and crystal healing. It was extraordinarily fascinating to her, and she would give it countless hours of her time just reading about the topic. This tiny, unassuming chapel was holding her back from such exploration. Amber was very young when her mother had been taken away from her, so she never got a chance to process what that meant. That caused her to grow up always seeking an identity. Even though her aunt and uncle did their best to provide her a protective shelter, it just never quite felt like home to her. Amber had treasured a few scattered belongings of her mother's that she used to construct an entire backstory for her. She believed that her mother was a spirit conjurer and secretly used the items to commune with the dead. This imaginary woman in Amber's mind shifted her away from their strict adherence to religiosity. She couldn't imagine that her mother would ever take part in such a practice, so any guidance that didn't feel like her mother's felt like smothering. Amber had found out about an abandoned mall that was transformed into a monastery, and her curiosity was piqued. She had always been fascinated by the idea of upcycling things for a better purpose, and hearing about a mediocre mall that had been repurposed for spiritual enlightenment intrigued her. Amber set out one night to explore. As she walked further in, she was struck by an eerie silence that hung the place still. The crunch of the leaves beneath her feet echoing through that stillness of the evening made her question why she came here, especially at night, but she persevered. The parking lot was completely empty, and the windows were boarded up, as if the entire building had been sealed off from the rest of the world. Had the article she read about been untrue? Had the idea of a repurposed mall already been a failure? Amber chose to find out. As she stepped inside the mall, she felt a sense of otherworldly energy pulsing through the space. The walls were covered in mysterious symbols, and the air was thick with the scent of burning plastic. Despite the disgusting smell, she made her way deeper into the mall and began to encounter strange setups of mannequins dressed up like mall employees. There were figures dressed in tattered mall security uniforms, wielding flashlights and radios, who seemed to be mockingly guarding the space. As she walked further into the space, she found more mannequins dressed in monastic robes. The further she got into the space, the more it became alive. The stores became illuminated and chants grew more present somehow without intensity. For a moment it felt as if everything was open for business. The further Amber explored the mall, the more surreal and distorted the space became. The walls seemed to shift and warp around her. She hadn't even had as much as a sip of tea before she got here, but the visions she encountered made her question if she had. She found herself lost staring at distorted mall objects like doors with razor-sharp teeth and vending machines that spew fire. Despite the danger and the sense of impending doom, Amber felt compelled to continue her exploration. She was drawn to the mysterious energy that seemed to permeate the space, and she had a sense that there were secrets hidden within the depths of the mall. She reached the massive atrium, and it was filled with an otherworldly tree. It morphed and moved like it was being animated by time. The monastic mannequins had gathered here, their eyes glowing with an intense energy that Amber could feel in the pit of her stomach. Suddenly, the walls began to shake, and the floor trembled beneath her feet. A spirit of the space had been awakened. Amber fought back as best she could, but the forces that she was facing were beyond her understanding. She could feel her life force being drained away. Then gravity disappeared. She was falling. She was floating. She wiggled her toe and felt she was firmly on the ground but still couldn't run. She knew she would not escape, and then her knees started to buckle. As she fell to the ground, she saw a figure appear before her. It was a woman dressed in all white. She was beautiful, but her eyes were empty and soulless. Amber became entranced and sat back and crossed her legs. At that moment, Amber logically knew she was lost, unsure and confused. She closed her eyes and fought as hard as she could, but no matter what, she could could not remember why she had come here to begin with. At the same time, she had no desire to escape. She realized that no amount of searching would ever bring her back to this feeling. She opened her eyes and looked up. Staring at what she wholeheartedly felt was her mother, Amber declared that this is where she will remain forever. The creature smiled, knowing it had claimed yet another soul to be consumed by its darkness.